Hello and welcome to the Chop Shop. My name is Dion Tucker, and I want to thank everybody for tuning into this episode of the Black Trombone Chronicles, where I'm honored to have the great Hakeem Bilal as my guest today. For those of you that don't know Hakeem, he's a fantastic trombonist, bass and tenor trombonist, and he's also the assistant professor of trombone at the University of West Virginia. So Hakeem, how you doing today, brother?
Man, I'm blessed, man. Thank you so much for having me, brother Dion. It's good to talk to you today. It's good to do this. I'm really,
Man,
really grateful, man.
man, it's great to see you. It's great to have your spirit on this side of the screen. And I'm just happy for the people to get to know you and myself. This is our first candid conversation. So, you
Yeah,
guys get to see how it all goes down. So we're all gonna learn a lot today. If you could start a little bit telling me where you grew up and how did you get into playing the trombone?
for sure, man. It's how much time you got, right? I'm a city boy through and through. So I was born and raised in Washington D.C. Um, I lived for a while in Prince George's County, Maryland, with my family. Relatively, four siblings, two older sisters, an older brother, and myself. I'm the youngest of four,
Okay.
and I grew up most of my teen years outside of DC. Then I moved into DC when I was in high school, and
Hmm.
so that the moving into the city from being living in the suburbs was a nice adjustment. Um, but like I said, I was the last of four, so I wasn't the first one. I wasn't the trailblazer, and we were
Right.
all living in an apartment in a 3-bedroom apartment. It was everybody, and
Yeah.
so I'm not going to use the term poor, but we were just under resourced. We didn't
Right.
because we didn't have that
I-
poor. My mother
yeah.
refused to accept the poor mentality.
Yeah.
And it's something that I'm really grateful for now that I'm
Yeah.
grown up. But we were just under resourced. We found a way.
Yeah.
We made
Yep.
it work, like many
Yeah.
families, right?
Yep. Yep.
So I am. So as I mentioned, my four siblings. My mom is black. My father is from Libya. So my father
Hmm.
is from North Africa, and
Hmm.
so I grew up um, immersed in this mostly predominantly black culture. But I would
Hmm.
find myself going to the mosque on Fridays and going to
Mm.
church on Sundays. My mother's
Wow.
Baptist, and my father's a Muslim. So
Wow.
from a young age, I found myself, I didn't always go to church or the mosque, but I was surrounded, in a religious, spiritual family that was
Mm.
accepting and open. And my dad, I'm really grateful for that.
Hmm.
I was being exposed to so many different viewpoints at a young age
Yeah.
that I had no idea,
Yeah.
that it
Yeah.
was not normal for everyone else. Um, yeah, man. And so
Yeah.
just weaving through that. So my father
Wow.
being international, and um, he loved classical music, still loves, right? Not
Mm.
loved, but is in love with classical music. And so as a
Mm.
child, I would sit by our stereo with him, and he would have these CDs of Deutsche Grammophon, like
Mm.
the gold label classical music.
Yeah.
And I would listen to all this music with him, not knowing what it was. He's just like, hanging out, spending time with my dad. And
Yeah.
he wasn't musical at all, but he loved world music. So it wasn't just
Mm.
classical music. It was the Cesaria Evora, the Portuguese lounge
Mm.
singer. It's Gypsy Kings, or and some
Wow.
just a wide range of sounds that I was
Yeah.
exposed to at a young age.
Yeah.
Um, and that was the basis of my love for music. I had no idea that I was, forming this passion
Wow.
for music. It didn't happen until I was in third grade, and
Hmm.
as mentioned, I was the youngest of four. My siblings went through this magnet school, this arts magnet school, from kindergarten to eighth grade, which
Okay.
was incredible. I mean, I
Mm.
looking back on it, I received one of the greatest educations I could have,
Wow.
because someone put a trombone in my hands at the age of 6 or 5. I was
Wow.
not sorry, the age of 8. Sorry, the age
Wow.
of 8 in third grade, and
Hmm.
I remember having the choice, when you show up and they give you the band education class, you choose your instruments. And I remember talking in your interview with John, he was talking about his last name was R. And your last name's T. So like by the time you get to the instruments, you couldn't choose what you originally wanted. But my last name's B, so I'm at the front of the list. So I saw these instruments, in front of me, and I'm thinking like, all right, we got flutes, we've got this tuba thing over there, and this one thing. I was a short kid, like this one thing that's taller than me on the stand. That's trombone. Like, what's that? I want to play that one. That's bigger than me. I want to try to conquer that thing. And I couldn't reach. and in many ways, I still can't reach seventh position, right? But that's the sheer size and majesty of it was like, I want to play that thing.
Wow.
So I was exposed at a young age. I was exposed to music and art and dance. And all of this played a role in my perception of musicality and excellence in a way, And so I wasn't taking lessons. I was kind of just playing trombone. I wasn't aiming towards anything until high school, 8th grade, when in this arts magnet school, some people who had graduated went to this private school in an area that's well known for sports and music. It's like one of the top 5 sports programs in the country, but also, low key has one of the most successful band programs in the country as well. And so I had no idea.
What school is that?
This is Dematha Catholic High School, which was in Hyattsville, Maryland, which has put out #1 draft picks in every sport and all this. But they put out some great musicians as well.
Right.
So
at least one.
At least one, right? And I remember my band director there was he was a member of the Army band. He was one of the young at the time. I think he was the youngest member of the Army band when he was in it. So there was this standard at that school, and I first saw the majesty of this school when I was in 8th grade. They came back to perform at my middle school to put on a concert for the students, and I saw some people that went to my school. I was like, oh, that's where they went. Oh man. And I see them playing in this band that sounds like, that when the clouds part, you get that.
Right.
I'm like, whoa, like I had no idea you could sound like that.
Yeah.
And so from that moment on, I'm thinking to myself, like, I want to do that. Like, I want to be a part of that ensemble. I want to be a part of that. I don't know anything about it, but like, I want that.
Yeah.
And so, that prompted me to do a band camp with the school and try to introduce myself and just be in that circle. And like I said, grow up. With under-resourced, right? Private Catholic school was something that if you look at it, that's a price tag. That's tuition.
Yeah,
that's
right.
That's several $1,000s a year.
Yeah,
for high school. We're not talking about college. Right. And so that was a challenge. Looking back to be able to pay for that or be involved with that, but my family didn't even flinch. Like my mom didn't even, there was an issue, but she never showed it to me, and I never. And I'm really fortunate for parents that were so supportive. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but like,
I understand. I fully understand what you're saying. I don't know how. As you're saying this, it's making me think about my mom, because I'm the youngest of 5 kids. And I'm the only child by my mom and dad. My mom had me when she was like 40. So I was like well after everybody else and much younger. And I don't know how in the world she did it. Like, I'm thinking about it now. She worked at like a grocery store, and she was like a florist. How do you take care of 5 people like doing that? And like you said, all of these things that, came up and that, I had to do, they never flinched, but it was just like, how in the world? I can't imagine. I can barely take care of myself.
Yeah. And I'd like to think that it's mostly a mentality of it's got to be done, not of like, what if, or how, what am I, but just this is the will. My family's, my mom's very religious. So like, this is the will of the Lord. This is God saying this is going to happen. Right.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah.
You say that, and my mom, my dad and my mom, my brother and I are from my father and my mom had a previous marriage with my other sisters. And so she's, seeing this, this teamwork that they would put into, supporting me in my musical education.
Yeah.
They didn't know what to do they didn't know how to raise a musician. But through that, my family, we have 2 musicians in the family now. Like, I was the first, but my brother and I are, I want to say in a lot of ways, my brother's a better musician than me.
Oh,
we've
wow.
taken, we can touch that in a second. We've taken 2 different paths to get to this level, but so it's I'm blessed, man. I'm blessed. And so I'm rambling, man. I could ramble.
Yeah, no. Let's talk about that a little bit. Your brother, what does he play? And you said he's younger than you. So do you feel
he's older?
Oh, he's older. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
He's older. So do you feel like that had an influence on your work ethic and how you go about, learning and playing music, that drive? And how does that influence you now? Is he still playing professionally? Like, tell me a little bit about that dynamic between you and your brother.
That's an excellent question. And when like the path that I took to get to, we'll say, like the plateau that I'm at now, and the path that my brother took to get, his recognition and where he is now. My brother is, he's older. He's a singer and a songwriter, playing mostly, I want to say it's indie pop, but it's everything. And he's been featured recently in the Washington Post, Rolling Stones, Vice magazine. Like, he's got, he's taking this more pop route that's getting tons of exposure and has he has this platform now, which is awesome.
Yeah. Wow.
But he didn't necessarily go to a conservatory like I did, or he didn't study music as formally, in the Western classical music, I'll say, as formally as I did. But he still managed to sculpt and mold his voice and nurture his voice and artistry. And he knew, he was unique, and he embraced that. And it took me a while to embrace my uniqueness in, in how I fit into Western classical music, because but seeing him every time I'd go home for the holidays and be around him in that energy, like, man, I need to bring this out of myself more, because I think, it's something that we get desensitized to it a little bit. Especially, I realize that as when you study music, you have to be able to deconstruct it to really manipulate it to where you want it to be.
Yeah.
So he's 2 years older than me.
Okay.
He was born in New York. I was born in DC. So my family lived in New York for a while before I was born. And so he's got this, he's a city kid as well, but in a different way. Like, he's super resourceful, he's brilliant. And so, it's pushed me a little bit. Like, when we lived in New York together, and we found ourselves, our paths intersected. I was in school in New York, and he was living in Brooklyn as an artist, and we started making some projects together, and we started making some music together, and it was weird, man. Like, it was, it was some really cool stuff, and it was weird stuff, but it was uniquely us. Right. And that was really cool. But like, I would have never seen that coming.
Yeah. That's so interesting. I always wonder, like, what would it be like if I had a sibling or like anybody that played music? Because I was like the kid in my room practicing, listening to stuff. They looked at me as like weird, because it's like, why don't you want to go out and do whatever? Like, why are you in your room practicing? But it was between sports and music. And I remember, I'll never forget the day I was playing football at the time. Football and basketball were my things. And in Florida, I grew up in Miami. Right. That's a year-round thing. There's no August hot all the time. So when it was time for a football practice, and my mom was like, "Look, you can do one or the other. You can do football or you can do music. Which one is it?" And it was just like, after this is Florida. So we played football every day as a kid, and then we'd go to football practice afterwards. So I've been playing like all day, and I was tired, and I had to go to this football practice, and it was just grueling. And I was like, you know what? Music it is. Like I'm sick of running these suicide drills. Like it's not that serious. Give me the trombone.
It's so funny you say that, because like that, something very similar happened to me when I was in high school, because I loved football as well, but I also loved band, and it was possible to do both. And so I found myself trying out for freshman football for, like I mentioned, for this school that had a really good football program where they would recruit people from out of state sometimes to come play. And so I'm sitting there like, I love band, I love football. And it made the choice clear for me when I showed up to that first practice. And I was, bigger kid. So they put me on the O-line. They put me in the trenches first practice. And I'll never forget going against this guy, DJ Jackson, who's like now a Brazilian jiu-jitsu fighter.
Oh, wow.
And, so you can see where this is going. Doing an Oklahoma drill, like my first day of football practice. I'm like, this is going to be fun. This is going to be good. Yeah. And the next thing you know, like the whistle blows and like I blink and then I'm on my back. I'm like, did we go? Was that it?
Yeah, right.
Oh no. Ow. That hurt.
Yeah. Yep.
That was my only football practice.
Yep.
I went back to the practice room after that.
I'm telling you, man. It's like you get these experience, and it was the same thing like in Miami Pop Warner football. That's like, these guys that are going to the NFL. It's like serious stuff. So these cats aren't playing around out there, and the same thing, reality sets in quick. It's like, the trombone doesn't hurt this much. I mean, it hurts sometimes, but not this much.
I'm like, not gonna break my collarbone.
Yeah, right. Oh man, that's funny. So talk to me a little bit about the music program there. You said the band director was very influential on you. Were there any other students, any other African-American students that were serious about music that might have had an influence on you as you were developing?
Great question. That is what got me in the door. Seeing these, I mentioned these two students, Matt Rogers was one, I'll never forget the name, and Vincent, I want to say his last name was Gardner. Funny,
okay.
But one played flute and one was a trombone player, both in sports. One played basketball and one played football. Tall brothers, one was big, and I saw them playing in this band that came to perform in my school full of a bunch of white kids, and they were like there were some black kids sprinkled in there. It wasn't necessarily predominantly white, but and they were so polished, and like they everybody had looked the part, and I was like, man, that's super cool. I want to be associated with something like that. I see that they are pursuing, they can achieve something at a high level. I want to be a part of that. So I got into the school and was in the program. My mom told me this after the fact, but school was over $7,000-8,000 a year, and we didn't have it. But I still showed up the first day of classes, and my mom didn't let that stop. Like she didn't let that stop them from processing payments, figuring out a way to make it work. It was like, no, you're going to this school, you're gonna be there, right? And so through that, meeting the band director, he nourished me into. He put a bass trombone in my hands in 10th grade, and that was the first time that I was exposed to an instrument that I could call like my own. I couldn't purchase my own instrument. I didn't purchase my own instrument until college, till my second year of college. I was using school-owned instruments or loaners, and my band director came and said, "I want you to play a bass trombone." He's like, "I think that your sound would be really well suited for this instrument, and you would excel." And I'm really thankful for that foresight. John Mitchell, shout out to John Mitchell at Dematha Catholic, and at So I was using this instrument, and that was when I started taking private lessons, and I couldn't afford the private lessons, but my band director helped subsidize out of his own pocket
Wow.
those lessons, and helped
Wow.
pay for, and looking back, it was a huge gesture that
Yeah.
I'm grateful for. And so I was able to get private lessons every week from a student. He was a DMA student at the University of Maryland. He's one of the influential people who helped me push me in the bass trombone route. His name was
Mm-hmm.
Carl Vidervol.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have weekly lessons with him where he would focus on just the minutia, the specific minutia of trombone. And I wasn't ready to hear it. I wasn't
Yeah.
necessarily like, I had no idea. He's like, no, focus on the articulation and the slur here. Really blow across. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay, cool.
Right.
But it was something that I was grateful for. And so I had lessons from, 10th grade up until I graduated. And that wasn't the first time I had private lessons, by the way. I did study with Duport Georges, who was the trombonist. Duport, he played
I know
Ray
Duport.
Charles.
Man, he's the first person that got me on the Ray Charles band. I subbed for him with Ray Charles. Like, that was the first time I played with that band, was for Duport. So small world.
Small world. He was my first like proper instructor on trombone. And I would go to his home on the weekends for like 35, 40 minutes. And we would play row shoes.
Wow.
And that helped get me, get me some of that structure. And then the next level was studying with gentleman Carl Vidervol. And all the while I was exposed to these opportunities, and I had, I was supported by a community. The community truly poured in and helped to shape my trajectory. And I'm so fortunate for it that there are, for my story, there's so many others that don't have that, And so I don't take that for granted. But I was exposed to, once I had this bass trombone in my hand, I'm playing in band and I'm getting comments and I'm trying out for Allstate and all these things. And I find myself succeeding, a little more and more. Than I realize, man, this is fun. I can I can do this.
Yeah.
I think I can do this. And so I started to apply for every youth orchestra under the sun. I mean, every youth. And so in the DC area, you've got Virginia, you've got Maryland and DC. All of them have their youth orchestras. They all have their own programs. And I was a part of every single one. I applied for all of them, and so this is where I'm grateful for my dad. And he would take me on Monday nights, I'd be in Northern Virginia. On Saturdays, I'd be in DC. On on Thursdays, I'd be out in Annapolis, and just at these different youth orchestras trying to get so much experience. And my dad never flinched. He would, let's go. I'll take you, and so I'm going all over the place here, but
it reminds me, I mean, as you say that, like, I mean, it's literally like a time capsule I'm in right now, going back to my own experience, because it was so similar for me. I was fortunate to go to Performing Arts High School, and the trombone teacher there is this cat named Dana Tebow. Amazing trombonist, absolutely amazing commercial trombonist. Like, he didn't improvise, but he did everything else, so the standard was just super high with him. If you weren't ready for your lesson, he would send you back to class. He's like, so sometimes the other players weren't ready, so he'd send Dion in. So I would get extra time, and knowing that I was always ready, but slowly, same thing. Any orchestra I could be a part of, I was like 14, 15 years old playing in the Senior Citizen Symphony. And same thing, my mom taking me to like Fort Lauderdale, from this like 45-minute hour drive. And she's like, what are you doing here? It's like, no, I'm doing this rehearsal for my teacher, just come back in an hour. And she was just always there. My same thing, my sisters, my family, everybody was so supportive. They just knew, like, okay, that's his thing, he has to go to this concert, he has to play this, and they supported that. And that's so important, because I think when it comes to like the time where we're at now, we understand how important that nurturing is.
Tough.
Yeah.
Like like you said, driving up to Fort Lauderdale 45 minutes and going back, and then you got to come back. Sometimes I bet you she would stay because it
Oh
might
yeah.
be, less travel time to go
Oh
home and
yeah.
come back, and
Yeah.
so it's that sacrifice. I was talking to my mom about this recently, and she admitted that, your being involved in so many groups taught us what it was like to be a parent of a musician, and what it was like to be supportive. We didn't understand all of the little things that you did, but we knew that you had to be somewhere. You had to be
Yeah.
in the room, and
Wow.
that was. I'm so grateful for that, man.
Man, yes, I'm grateful for that too. Shout out to your parents and your village, and to all the villages that nurture us as Black men, because it truly does take a village. It really does.
It does.
Um, yeah, as they let you go from the nest a little bit, and as you went into higher education, what was that experience like? Where did you wind up in school? How did you wind up choosing to go to that particular school? And what was that environment like? How did it differ from where you currently were?
You know, everything. I think I made all the choices. I made the choice to become a musician in high school, and I never looked back. And that kind of made all my decisions easy for me when it came to
Mm,
choosing higher education, choosing post second master's level education and beyond. My choice was pretty clear because I said,
mm,
there was an experience when I was in high school where I was working with the National Symphony Orchestra Young Associates program, and I was playing side by side with members of the NSO and in a concert, and I was like,
mm,
this is a feeling I want to do this for the rest of my life, and I
mhm.
will do no matter what it takes. I will put myself in the position to do that.
Yeah.
And so I hadn't seen many of us the uh, in the orchestra, and I looked up. I was trying to do any research back in the day, pre
Hmm.
Google search. It's just like
Right.
you couldn't just tell who was in. I knew of John Lofton in the L.A. Phil, who was, or
Mm,
he was, I think he was in L.A. Phil at the time, and
mhm,
as an African American trombone player, bass trombonist, I was like,
mhm,
yeah, I want to be like him. And so
mhm,
I decided to go to conservatory. I decided to apply to all the conservatories I could,
mm.
and much like everybody, I didn't get into Juilliard. I didn't get. I wasn't that good, but I did get into. I went to the Peabody Conservatory, so I decided to go to a conservatory to
Mhm.
hone those skills and to
Yeah.
immerse myself in that culture. And from there, for master's education, I decided to surround myself with people who were successful as auditioners and as freelancers, and
Mm.
kind of had the work ethic to
Yeah.
get you there. And so
Yeah.
I kind of, answered, asked myself the question of, all right, so what do I want to do? All right, how do I get there? Who do I need to be with? Who just
Mm.
won a job? Who's won a
Yeah.
job in the last few years? Okay, cool.
Mhm.
Over here. Okay.
Yeah.
Who's and I let that dictate my choices. I didn't even think
Mm.
twice about it in a
Mm.
lot of instances. And so looking back on it, I was like, man, those were some fearless choices.
I'm telling you, man, I'm sitting here like, God, that's incredibly smart at that
I
stage of
had
your
no
life.
idea. If you like, I didn't think I was being anything extra at the time, but
Yeah.
man, I'm really thankful for it.
Whew,
So
that's man. Shout out to you because that's huge and it's bold. Like you said, a lot of times we make our decisions based off of what we think. I thought that the best thing for me moving to New York was to be a member of the Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra.
yeah,
That was like it, and I came here,
yeah,
it's like, oh wow, there's all kinds of other stuff you could do, but it's like you had some foresight. It's like, what do I need to do in order to get here? Let's
right,
cut the middleman out. Let's just
right.
get to it. Yeah, that's
And
awesome.
I didn't even let what's crazy is that I wouldn't let um something like deadlines. When it came to applying for master schools, and I didn't let the I applied for certain places sometimes late, and like I didn't know where I was going to school sometimes before until late in the summer. But
Mm,
I didn't let the timeline of what people were doing and what you should be doing by the time you're a senior and all this. I didn't
Right.
let that affect my choices. I said, I want to do this one thing. I'm going to do whatever it takes to make it. And I kind of made my own rule for it and created that opportunity instead of
Yeah.
abiding by the structure or the
Yeah.
status quo, you know.
Yeah.
If that makes
we can't
sense.
we can't really do that anyway. As black men, it doesn't really work. But most importantly, because it's not designed for us.
Mm-mm.
And I think that that's one of the things that's really important to understand, for somebody who maybe sees it from a different perspective as us. A lot of these institutions, a lot of these things that we are a part of were not designed for us. So, in a strange way, it's kind of like we're just in an environment getting to take part of something that is not necessarily designed for us. Because if it was designed for us, there would be all other kinds of things built into it that are not there. So I think with this series, this is why something like this is important. This is built for us.
Yeah.
This platform, this conversation is built for us. And it's important to, I think, moving forward, figure out what are those things that really work for us and how do we enhance those pieces, and how do we figure out how to navigate our way through the things, even the things that aren't designed for us. We still have to navigate our way through that, because
Oh yeah.
that's kind of how the
Gracefully.
world is. Yeah. And
Well.
happily, and willingly, like, yeah, this is what I want to do. But it's really interesting that you said that. Let's just like kind of dig into that a little bit.
Yeah.
As you started to go into like working in the professional field, like you had a clear idea of what you wanted to do. But I'm thinking back to like the stuff you told me with your brother and how he shaped his way of doing his things, right? And you seeing that, you knowing that you have that part in you that you want to bring into whatever situation you step in. How did you approach those situations, whether it be orchestra auditions, or because everything I see of you, your personality is there. It's like, oh yeah, there's Hakeem. There's like something jump that's about you. That's not the easiest thing for most people to do, and to fit into these different spaces that
Mm.
might not be designed for that. So how did you go about navigating that and just staying true to yourself?
Man, I don't know, man. It's like that's a really good question. But it's man, that's a really good question because I think the mentality is huge. Like staying true to yourself is one, and being uniquely you. Um, I didn't know a lot of technical. I wasn't a technician as I was a musician. I consider myself. I had something to say. I didn't necessarily know how to say it
Hmm.
effectively, and so I think I sought to better myself in becoming a better technician on the instrument so that I can kind of get the ideas in my head out and be more genuine in that way. But I really, I think that's a really good question, man.
I mean, I think it's always interesting. Like, I'm not a psychologist at all, as we know. I'm a trombone player, but these are like therapy sessions almost when we do these things. It's so interesting because when I listen to your backstory and I understand what you come from, the diversity that you come from, the religiously, with your parents being, your mom being Baptist, your dad being Muslim, that's like two different worlds, but obviously you were there's so many parallels. You were able to find those parallels, like without the fight of, no, this is this. It's like, no, this is what it is. This is who I am, and this is what it's going to be.
Exactly.
That's really hard to do
It's
for a lot
hard,
of
yeah,
people.
and it took a lot of perspective. It took a lot of being exposed to seeing and just seeing a lot of the world, whether it was seeing the community within the mosque and just it's a really beautiful thing, in that you might not know someone and yet they were going to take you in and treat you like their brother, or also just seeing the tremendous musicians in a Baptist church. You can go to any church in DC, and look in the rhythm section, and you probably got at least one Grammy in there somewhere, right? Or you get somebody in there who is who can play. And so being exposed to all of that helped shape my worldview spiritually, and I guess with values, with that are, if you're a good person, if you're genuine, if you're nice, if you're just a good person, you will, a lot of doors will open up to you. There's no room to be resentful or bitter. It takes a lot of energy.
Yeah, it does.
That doesn't go to say that, bad things don't happen and you shouldn't be mad or you shouldn't feel a certain way. But I make an active choice to promote positivity and to see the good things in life, man. I think that's kept me stable. It's kept me mentally strong as I have, progressed in my career and had turbulent situations in front of me, whether it be performing or in academia or in, on the street,
Yeah. What are some of the, if you care to share, what are some situations that have impacted you that you feel like, whether it be on or off the bandstand, that you kind of feel like, okay, this was an adverse situation that I had to deal with, but you found some good out of it and you were able to overcome, for lack of a better thing. But what's like some adversity that you flipped into something positive?
I'm thinking back to my time studying in New York, and like it was tough as a musician. It was tough to live. I hadn't been, living in New York on its own is a challenging experience, and trying to make it as a musician was even tougher. I mean,
Yep. Yes.
it takes, and not a lot of people make it, and that the city was eating me up. Trying to survive on the city was something that it created a lot of turmoil, and I wasn't able to focus as much. And so I think I had to step away from that and go to a new place. And I went down to Texas. And I think that working through the adversity of like trying to make any kind of work happen in New York, and being so hungry and so driven to create, taking that out of New York City and putting it into a place like Fort Worth, Texas, changed my mentality. It kept me driven in a way to looking towards that carrot. And I'm thankful for that hardship, but I mean, it was tough.
Yeah.
But thinking on a particular instance of, we'll say, dealing with race, this is kind of a left turn. I was privileged. I didn't really see a lot of racist activities happening or experience any injustices until I was traveling the world, until I stepped foot in Asia at times. I took an audition in overseas, and getting feedback and hearing people talk about you as a performer and using terms that are stereotypical was something that was it was a shock, and I had to kind of navigate and take that hit on the chin. Now I'm thinking specifically about this European audition I took, where the committee said that I was playing jazzy, was the term they said.
Right.
And I think the audition list was like, Haydn's The Creation and like Mozart and Haydn and Beethoven 9, and like, yeah, you're a little too jazzy. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I've been to conservatory. I've been studying classical music for over 10 years, and you said it's jazzy.
Right. Code word. black.
And so in the moment, I'm thinking like, oh man, like I'm legit honest with you because I'm so oblivious in the moment. I'm like, did I swing something? Like,
right.
did I put a tenuto and like, did I do like some kind of,
Right.
no,
Yeah. Right.
no. And it wasn't
Wow.
until I got home that I was like, man, I
Wow.
was just in this situation that, people, called me out for being X, Y, and Z, and I just had
Yeah.
to stand and be like, okay,
Yeah.
okay, and
Yeah.
that was a first for me. And so
Yeah.
to deal with that and unpack that after the fact, I was like, man, like how many other opportunities or how many other instances that I know of that has that happened? Or I don't think it's been many, but
Yeah.
it really it opened my eyes, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And you make me think about man, it's just crazy the parallels that every story you tell, it's like, oh yeah, I remember when I went through something like that. And it's funny, like growing up in Miami, like the area I grew up in, is a pretty nice neighborhood in South Miami.
What's your neighborhood?
Diverse. It was called Kendall.
Okay,
So yeah, it's like South Miami. My neighbors were like Cuban, white, all different kinds of
very
neighbors. So
diverse.
it was a very diverse community. So I never had my first experience with like racism with the police or anything like that was I lived in like a golf course community, right? And it's like 3 mile like loop essentially. So I used to jog around the loop. And one
Oh
time
man.
a police officer asked me, I had to be like 12 or 13. What are you running from? And I was like, it was so confusing. Like, especially to 12, 13. It's like, what am I running from? I was like, I'm just jogging, And I think at that point he realized, like, okay, this is like a kid or something, but I had no idea. Like, I just kind of let that go. All of my friends, mixed race. Fast forward to the first time I leave the country, the first time I ever got called the N word
Mm.
was in Lithuania.
Mm.
Lithuania. What the hell do you know about the N word in Lithuania? Like that was my initial thought. Was
Like word.
really, y'all know about
Okay.
that? Like, but then I realized, like, oh, this is a global thing, and that was my first wake up call. Because when you travel as a musician, it's like, oh, especially as a jazz musician, like, oh, you've seen the recordings, you're loved all over the world because of what you do. And you are, there are people that are
For that.
genuinely, but I wasn't in my normal setting at that time. I was just a black person in Lithuania. And
They
these
didn't know.
dudes they were young. And I was just like, it was baffling to me to see that this whole thing crosses borders, but once you understand historically, you're like, oh man, this was going on before it even got over here. It's just you put the pieces of the puzzle together and you're like, okay. And again, you realize how you're navigating through these spaces that were not
Exactly.
necessarily built for us,
Yes, and we have to be in a way hypersensitive to these people's predications as musicians, as black musicians,
Yeah.
especially when we travel because we're afforded access to all these people that you know
Mm-hmm.
most people don't have.
Mm-hmm.
And if nothing else, like we just have access to these prejudices, and
Yeah.
we have to find ourselves playing that code switching game at times. Like we find ourselves, and we're really good at it, right?
Yeah.
Like it could be a whole other
Masters.
episode of code switching, right?
I'm telling you. I'm telling you.
But that's but that not to say that it doesn't happen here in the States either, or that I haven't been put in any kind of unique predicaments. I'm thinking of one here. I live in Pittsburgh, and in Western, I play in the River City Brass Band. Wonderful brass group, 30 musicians, world class players, and we
Mm-hmm.
perform a lot in the communities around Pittsburgh, Western Pennsylvania, and there's a mixed view of people.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just keep it at that. And I remember
Yes.
playing a benefit, a fundraiser for a school for girls in Africa that was being held at in an event, and our band was the entertainment for the evening. And I had looked in, myself, and I have a bandmate in the trombone section, Gabriel Colby, who also played in the project with us, who were both brothers, and we're the only two brothers in this band and sitting in the trombone section, which is awesome. But I looked at the room of this fundraiser for the schoolgirls in Africa, and I see that it's a room full of Anglo-Saxons, right? And it's nothing wrong with that. Like, it's cool. Yep. It's cool. All right. And we're starting the second half, and the lead fundraiser, the chairwoman, is making her remarks, and we're about to start playing, and she's talking about how the work they're doing in Africa is just so important, and that they're giving this voice and this light to children that did not have it before. And I'm like clocking all these words in this. I'm like, man, this is a really unique choice word she's using to describe her mission. And then the unspeakable happens, and I had no idea how to react in the moment. She's talking to her audience. She turns to the band mid-speech, faces myself, looking at myself and Gabriel, and says, "And you two," pointing to the only two black members of the band, like, "And you two, I'm just so happy that y'all are here with us today. I'm just so happy that you're a part of this event." And my heart sank, and I had no. How do you react in the moment to something like that? How do you? And it didn't hit me until I look at my bandmates' faces. The other, everyone else, white guys they see this, they are pale. They're like,
yeah.
And,
yeah, right. It's like, well, I guess I'm happy to be here then. Thank you.
We're the hired. Like how did I get lumped into your?
Oh my god.
I wish this was not a real story, but this was, this, and this was the first time that I had been just a part of this. You call it a microaggression, whatever, macroaggression, but just to have the attention put on you because you're the only black person in the room. Definitely unfair, and so that you had to grow up fast with that, man.
You remind me of another story, and this is like amongst bandmates. So there's a trumpet player that I work with, great trumpet player, older white cat, one of the sweetest people I know. Like, and so this is funny. I've never told this story to anybody really, but part of the uniform of this gig is a vest and a straw hat. Okay, it's like a true Dixieland type. Yeah, a straw hat, right?
Okay.
So here's where the decisions go. You got somebody that you love to play with. I know that this person is genuine, straight up at heart. But because of the way the band looks, older white men wearing straw hats and vests, they are going to get hired for certain occasions, right, that we would never be on. However, me being one of these people who's open to all these styles and just loves playing with everybody, hey, this cat calls me for a gig. I'm like, cool. Where's it at? Blah, blah, blah. And you get up and it's like, hey, here's the straw hat. And it's like, oh, crap. Like, all right. Like, what am I going to do? Like, am I going to say, like, listen, man, I ain't wearing your damn straw hat, or am I going to, and we're playing that style, so it's like, okay. But I kind of suck it up. It's like, all right, doing the gig, couple hours. It's a freaking hat. I know me. I know all of this stuff. Let's move past it. We do this gig, and it's like out in the Hamptons, and it's for one of these like country clubs that, there's like 40 or 50 families in this club, and they have like a little fair, like just for this club.
Must be nice.
So one of the, it's on the beach. It's someplace we would never have access to if we didn't have to work there 9 times out of 10. But at any rate, it's a whole other thing. So we're going, right. So we're going to play, and the guitar or banjo player looks at me, and he's like, wow, nice to meet you. I said, nice to meet you too. He goes, man, how is it that a young African-American man like yourself finds your way playing this music? And I was like, and at this point, this is another band mate, and I was like, well, this is my music. like, what? What are
Where
you
do you
talking
begin?
about right now? Like, where do you? But the other thing was that kind of stuck with me because in New York City, there's a large scene of this traditional jazz music going, but it's mostly young white players,
Mm,
very few African American players. So I kind of understood where he was coming from because most of the younger people he worked with are probably young white players. But at the same time, I'm like, this is my music. Like, what the hell
right.
are you talking about?
It's
you
mine.
know? And I was like, why aren't there more brothers playing this music? It was such like a complex thing that came from this
Word.
one little sentence that like still kind of sticks with me to this day. Like, why aren't there more of us playing this style of music? It is our music. And how come like now it's like there's a black guy playing traditional jazz?
And
That's
that's
weird.
weird.
It's like, but that's real.
Yeah.
That's like the real things that we have to deal with as musicians, the little micro things that happen all the time that people might not think about so much.
Crazy. That's crazy. Like, but it's also, it brings, like you said, it brings up a legit, well, why aren't we though? You know, and
Yeah.
you think about the I think about Henry Fillmore coming to mind. I'm just thinking of like
Mm.
Las's trombone. I don't know why it just came to my mind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But you know, just the history of certain musics in the country
Yeah.
and what that meant, and the, you know, who played it and who it was written for, and it's a unique question, man.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something, one of these things where you're trying to figure that out moving forward, how to navigate through that space. Speaking of which, in 2020 was an interesting year, um, to say the least,
Yep.
for many reasons. We had to deal with the coronavirus. We had to deal with the racism virus, which we've been dealing with for hundreds and hundreds of years. Um, how did how did that year, now that we're past 2020 and we're kind of moving on, and I think we see a light at the end of the tunnel, but as we know, the struggle kind of always continues because it has been ongoing. But how did you use this year of diversity that's been like in our face, like directly in our face? You can't escape it. How did you use that and use your personality, flip it to positive, to where you're in the state where you are now? You're able to move forward, you're able to help people, you're using that adversity to your advantage. What was this last year like for you, and how did you use music to overcome some of that adversity?
Wow, that is a huge, excellent question. Um, and I didn't have the answer for many months because, like, you know, I felt lost in the summer, man. I really did not, you know, having that rug swept underneath you. You know, it's. I'm recall like I was scheduled to go on tour in March, you know, to Europe
Mhm.
and Abu Dhabi and all these places, and you know, and to have all that canceled, and like that income
Yeah.
from your life, you know, that puts you in a dark place. And so
Yes.
I began to get out. I admit that I'm not always positive. First of all, that it's not
Hmm.
always sunshine and roses. You know, that's not the way
Right.
it is. But I choose to take that path.
Hmm.
My students helped me.
Hmm.
I'm so grateful for teaching. I think my responsibility to them helped pull me out of what I was going through,
Hmm.
to no matter what, because they're the future. And
Right.
I could be going through whatever issues I have now with this pandemic. It might not be the same for them, but at the end of this, they're going to come out and be creating music. They'll be in the world, you know,
Yeah.
making their mark. And so I rededicated my purpose to inspiring creativity and showing kids, particularly college students and younger, that you can create right now. Now is it's a renaissance
Hmm.
in um in music, because we're all at a level playing field for the first time.
Hmm.
Everybody is at home. Nobody's out on tour. Nobody's out playing, 100
Yep.
shows. So now is your time to do something creative and something that is uniquely you. This also ties into like advice I would give to the younger generation. But that being able to create, showing that that's possible still has kept me positive.
Yeah.
The trombone project that we did this past summer was another pivotal thing in seeing the room, and hanging out. The Zoom hang was something that was kind of impromptu a little bit. It happened, and then but just seeing, 30, 40 people on the screen, all the same color, like having a good time, smiling, like, hey, and heavy hitters at that. Like not just,
I was gonna say the
Joe
caliber
Schmo,
cats, like for real. For real, man. That was serious.
That was just a shot of dopamine, like just instantly made me feel like, man, I'm not alone, and we're gonna make it through this, and we just have to create. We have to do what we're good at and do what we're best at. We'll figure out the minutia. We'll figure out exactly what our language is in this setting, but let's go. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And, let's get it. Now's the time to do that one thing that you have been on the fence about. Like, get it done.
Here we are. I only recently, and a lot because of that, that Zoom call that you're talking about, that's how this whole series started. I saw all of these faces on the screen that a lot of people I didn't know, a lot of people I did know, but just the caliber of players that was there, and knowing that this is our community, like right here in front of me. Like I've never seen it before. I've never even thought about seeing it, which is kind of strange. I'm like pro black everything, and never really thought like, man, why don't we all get together and like do something, and make this excellence. So I think the name of the group says it all, the Black Excellence Trombone Choir. Everybody in that group is excellent, and it's like Black excellence at its finest. If you guys haven't checked that out, you check out that project. Check it out. For sure. If you could, I'm gonna ask you one more question before I let you go. If you could draw a parallel, something that you're into outside of music that helps you stay grounded in your music. Music, we can like kind of burn out sometime by doing exercise and routine. It becomes repetitious. We need things from outside of music to help keep us inspired. What are some of those things that help keep you inspired?
Oh man, it's a growing list, but those are the things that give you the experience and the wisdom when you come back to the horn to play something meaningful. But things that I love that I've even had more time to do now. It's one, I love cooking. I love barbecue. I love. I mean, I feel like it's a correlation between like trombone and barbecue. It's like it's almost a part of the path, But,
yes.
I love to eat it, cook it. I love cooking in general. That brings me, this nourishing yourself, and choosing and seeing what you put into your body, like what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
That's important to me. On a hobby basis, or it used to not be a hobby, but in a previous life, I was a professional gamer. And
oh, really?
I just got back into streaming. So I have one of my bands, Beauty Slap, awesome funk electronic group based in Pittsburgh here. We've been streaming consistently on our Twitch channel that's then being put up in YouTube, and so creating content. And I find that it's a nice little decompression. I'll play games, like I'll just play video games and stream. And I used to be really, really good, but like, I'm a little rusty, but I do it now, and it brings me so much joy. And the parallels between like gaming at a competitive level and music at a professional level, they're all the same. It's the same as like the parallels between sports at a high level. It takes practice. It takes dedication. It takes drills. It takes fundamentals, wisdom of, what you're doing, the situation at hand. All those things apply. And so I was able to use the focus that I've gained as practicing in the practice room and apply that to the focus that's required to finish a level or to play a game of Call of Duty, and so and vice versa. The adrenaline from playing a game like that where you're in a server with 100 people and you're the last one alive, or you win the game, to playing in a packed hall of 6,000 people, or better yet, the Indy 500 in front of like 300,000 people at the same time. That the parallel, it's not that far off. Like that heart pounding. You're like, oh, this is great. So that's a big one, and that's something that I really enjoy when I have the time. Now, being a full-time professor and also practicing and teaching, I don't always have time. Like the same time I would have growing up playing. I can sit down and just play video games forever, but when I do, I enjoy it. So if you have a chance to check out those streams, man, check us out, the Beauty Slap.
yeah, definitely. I'm gonna make sure I put those links in the description too. Yeah. And I used to be into it too. I saw myself going down a dangerous path with gaming, meaning like that for all of those reasons, like that adrenaline. And when I was like, I have to get a match in before I go to sleep. Like once I started feeling that way, that's when I was like, okay, I got to scale back. And now I leave.
I fought.
Yeah.
Sacrifice. You got to make sacrifices to get to that level. You've got to be able to dedicate time and step away. So I relate to that a lot.
Yeah. And I think it's similar with music too. We can just go nuts and forget to like step back and take a break and just put the horn down and go and do something else. Like that's as important as what we're doing. So I'm glad that you shared that passion for something that I know people are seriously passionate about, gaming. Like that's real.
A lot of gamers, and man, I'm working through an issue right now. Like last night, my graphics card just died on me. So I'm like, I like to mess with computer parts, and I build my own computers and all this stuff. So it's all like that part of my brain is on right now. I'm thinking like in this interview, I'm like, man, like what could that problem be? Is it a motherboard issue? Do I have to repaste the thermal paste on the CPU? Do I have to, it's fun, it's like
I totally get it. I totally get it. Man, Hakeem, man, this has been just amazing spending this time talking with you. Your insight, your spirit, your story, just everything has been it's been filling, it's been like a good meal. I got a little appetizer, I got the main course, I got some dessert. My heart is fully fulfilled. So thank you so much.
I really appreciate you, man. And to those listening, thank you for listening. To the young people out there that are doing this, that are still navigating this, y'all keep going. You're special. I think that, there's a message out there, especially to the kids of color. It's that you're special. You're cool. You're not just special, like you're hip. And if there's one last thing on it, that's it. It's like everybody is hip and everybody like do you, be you.
Yes. So true. And thank God that you are an example of that, and that we have people like you to give that example to the up and coming youth out there. It's much needed. It's much needed. And I hope that everybody that watched this interview feels a little bit better. I know that I do. I know I do. And I want to thank all of you for watching this episode of the Black Trombone Chronicles. If you want to learn more about Hakeem, you can click the links in the description. And if you haven't done so yet, make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel, The Chop Shop. Thank you so much. Please push it now, right now. Thank you all so much for watching. Hakeem, thank you so much for coming on and being a part of this. And I'll see you next time at The Chop Shop. Later.
Peace.